Assalamu alaikum and welcome to English Conversation at Explimp. This is a special class specially designed for the beginners learners of English language. At Explimp English Conversation is a unique class because today we have another activity number 2, and why we have started these classes because we try to engage you so that you could start learning English right now by conversating with us and with the people around you. The first everything is safety is important. If you are not at a safe place, first try to find out the safe place and then come to this interactive video so that you could create your questions and answer your question, and this way you would become part of conversation, right? You could start conversating with us and with yourself, and you could also then start conversating with the people around you. In today's activity we have this phrase, do you plan to plus verb. Please remember, we will start from the easy things and then we would go on to some more difficulties, but we would start from the easiest things. So today our phrase is, do you plan to plus verb, and the verb mean like this is a variable place. You could add more and more verbs into this place. The one thing that is needed, like you could find out some verbs list, you could Google it and you could have some 4, 5 or 10 verbs and just put a verb here and boom, your phrase is created, or I would say like your question is created. At the start you could say like we have used a do. It means like we ask questions, and then the answer of this question is also easy. For example, if I say, do you plan to plus verb, then the answer would be, no, I don't plan to plus verb, or yes, I plan to plus verb, right? So you could use the same verb there, and with that verb you could also use some nouns. But why we have started these types of English conversation classes? The main reason is that what we want to do, we want you to start speaking English language right now. So today is the activity number 2, and you have got the information about the phrase. The phrase is, do you plan to plus verb, and so let's start it. Okay, on the right side you could see there is a list of the verb for you. You could find out another list of the verbs, but if you don't have time till then you could use these verbs. Like the first one is practice, learn, go, watch, heard, help, tell, and sleep. So why these verbs are important? Because if you don't have these verbs, automatically you won't be able to get the verbs. Like you might not be remembering the verbs. So you could put the list of the verb in front of you, and then you could start creating questions and answering the questions along with us, right? I hope you are ready. So let's go and start our first phrase, our first question, and answer it. But first, what is the phrase? The phrase is, do you plan to plus verb. And what does it mean? It means like every person, like we want to do something, right? But before doing it, like do we plan it, or do we plan it or not? Like what is our strategy for this? And please forgive me if I may pronounce, and please find out the pronunciation of the word plan, because the way we pronounce it, maybe it's a bit weird, but you could Google it and you can find out the pronunciation of the verb plan. Okay, so do you plan to plus verb? This is the phrase. Let's create our first question. Are you ready? Okay, right. Okay, do you plan to practice English? Practice is a verb and English is a noun. After the practice you could add more and more other sort of phrases. For example, do you plan to practice English language, or spoken English language, or American spoken English language? So all these are then phrases, right? And so the answer is, no, I don't plan to, or no, I do not plan to practice English. And the contraction would be, no, I don't plan to practice English. And the yes or the positive answer is, yes, I plan to practice English. Okay, so what is next? The next one thing is that we will create more questions. Do you plan to learn grammar? No, I don't plan to learn grammar, but I plan to learn spoken English. So here I have used a conjunction which makes a contrast between my first idea and the second idea, right? Like, no, I don't plan to learn grammar. This is not what I want to plan, because I don't want to learn that. Why? Because I plan to learn spoken English. So my priority is to learn the spoken English. Now, how would you answer this question? Do you plan to learn grammar? Or what is the other thing you would like to plan to? You could answer it right now. Now, what is the next one? The next is, again, do you plan to learn grammar? But if we want to create more and more questions on this phrase, definitely we will hide this place. Why? Because here we could add more and more verbs. So the first question could become, do you plan to go to Islamabad or Karachi or Canada? Wherever you want, you could mention the name after the verb go. The next question is, do you plan to visit to some natural places or to your friend's home, right? So what is your answer? You could answer me. And the next question is, do you plan to read books? So right now you could answer me, no, I don't plan to read books, or yes, I plan to read books. So whatever is your answer, please read it loudly or speak it loudly so that you could start learning English language with the help of conversation by watching these questions and answers. So what is the next thing? The next one is, do you plan to start your own business? So this is something in your mind, like if you want to start your business, so do you have any planning for that? Like, do you plan for that? Okay, so please answer for me. Oh yes, I plan to start my own business. This is quite interesting, right? And the next one is, watch. Do you plan to watch movies with your family members or with your friends or alone? What is your planning about watching the movies? For me, I don't plan to watch movies. Why? Because I don't have that much time. Rather, I would love to visit some natural places and meet with my friends and have fun together instead of watching movies. Okay, what is the next one? The next one is, do you plan to get up early in the morning or at a specific time? So now let's see what is the answer. The answer is no, I don't plan to get up early in the morning. And the other answer is, but I plan to get up. Okay, I have written early in the morning again, but you could write it like this. But I plan to get up at 8 o'clock. Or the positive answer could be, yes, I plan to get up at 7 o'clock. Now, if I ask you this question, what do you think? Do you plan to get up early in the morning? At which time do you plan to get up? Please tell us. Now, what is the next? The next one is, again, we have do you plan to plus verb, but this time with other questions. Do you plan to run your own business? Do you plan to play games? Do you plan to do exercise? Do you plan for him to be a successful person in his business? Do you plan for her to achieve her objectives? Do you plan on a planner to let you manage your plannings? Do you plan them to be part of the activity? Yes, I plan them to be part of the activities, because without them, this video is nothing. This is only and only for them. So if I want them to be part of this activity, and for this, I do some sort of plannings and try my best how they could be part of this interactive activities so that they could start learning English language right now with us. Okay, so what is the next one? The next one is, I hope you have answered all these questions, or if you couldn't answer it, it's okay, no problem. The next one is the WH question. The first one is what. What do you plan to do, or to plus verb. And when there is a WH question, then there are two other questions. The first one is why do you plan to do? Like for example, if you want to do something, then what is the reason why you do that, right? Okay, so why do you plan to plus verb? And the third question along with this is how. How do you plan to do something? For example, if I ask you this question here, my first question is what do you plan to do? Maybe your answer is I plan to start learning English. So this is what you plan to do, right? But here's a question, why? What is the question? Why do you plan to start learning English? Like what is the reason? Why not other language? So the simple answer is, well, I plan to start my English language because English is the language of international communities, education and businesses. Also, there are many other reasons why I should start learning English language, but I think these are very important reasons: the international communities, education and businesses. Now, what is the next answer, the question? The next one is, okay, so you want to learn English because of this reason, but how do you plan to learn English language? Like, how will you do that? What would be the process of doing this, right? Okay, so the answer is, well, I have scheduled my timetable and I thought about some other strategies as well. Okay, so it is not about only scheduling your timetable. You should also have some other strategies, because the process of doing something, how would you be doing, that is very important, right? Okay, so we have created these questions about what and why and how. Please remember, the questions why and how will be attached with every other WH question, right? Okay, so what is our next question? Our next question is, which types of English do you plan to plus verb? Okay, so you want to learn English, but in English there are types of English, right? Like business English and spoken English, and there are other types of English like grammar English and English for the test. So my question is, okay, and the other thing is, again, why? So why this specific type, right? So why do you plan to plus verb this type of English? And the third one is, then, okay, we have got the reason, but how? How do you plan to plus verb? Like, how would you do this? What would be the process of learning this type especially, right? My first question is, which types of English do you plan to learn? Well, the simple answer is, I plan to learn spoken English. So it is most widely understood language. Why do you plan to learn spoken English? Why not the other types of languages? For example, the business English or grammar English. Well, the answer is because it is easy, interesting and fun to learn spoken English. Like, it has no hurdles, no problems. I could learn it easily, right? And the second reason is it is initially needed for me. And after then what I could do, like I could go for other relevant skills such as grammar and writing, reading, etc. Okay, good. I've got it. The next question is about the where do you plan to plus verb. Okay, so you want to do something and you have also mentioned the type and why you do it and how would you do it. But the question is where? Where do you plan to plus verb? And again, if you choose a place, then again there is a question, why do you plan to learn or to do something at this place? Like, you have to ask this question, why and how questions, with every other WH question, right? Okay, so how do you plan to plus verb? What is the planning to learn English or to do something at that specific place? So my first question is, where do you plan to learn spoken English? So my answer is, well, I plan to learn spoken English at many different places, such as home, class, and online. Now, your question could be, why do you plan to learn spoken English at many different places? Well, because this way we go through different experiences and we learn differently, which is fun. For example, we learn at home, which is easy, relaxed. We learn at school with our friends, which is fun, which is like you learn from each other, you share your ideas. And online, you get more ideas from across the globe. You watch videos and you search the internet and see how the people learn. So you get more ideas online. How do you plan to learn at Explimp English? Well, at Explimp English, I watch videos and get new ideas about English language. Next slide is about when do you plan to plus verb and why do you plan to plus verb at that time? And how do you plan to plus verb at that specific time? Like the time when you plan to learn or you plan to do something. So please tell us why and how. The first question is, when do you plan to start practicing your English? The answer could be, I plan to start it from next week. Okay, now why do you plan to start it from next week? Well, this week I'm stuck in the other work. That is the reason I plan to start it from next week, or I planned it next week. The last question is, how do you plan to come up with such conclusion? Like this conclusion, what do you plan to do and where and how and which type, all these conclusions, So how do you plan to come up with this conclusion or with such conclusion? The answer is, well, first of all, I thoroughly analyze my current activities and then I plan accordingly. This is how I come up with such conclusion. Like this is usually I do. First of all, I analyze my current activities. For example, I list them up and see what is in my current activities, what is going on and what could I do next? Like how could I integrate the next demanded activity? So this is how I do my things and this is how I come to such conclusion. Okay, so the final slide is, do you plan to plus verb? Let's create some more questions. And here you have to answer the question right now. Don't worry about the wrong or right answers. Just start practicing. Like this is not the schooling homework, right? Where you put too much pressure on your psychological status, right? You just go with the flow. Just try answering the questions and be happy while answering the question if that is wrong or right. So the first question is, do you plan to do something? So please tell us. Do you plan to do something? You could simply say, yes, I plan to do something, or no, I don't plan to do anything. So whatever answer you want, you could also add more to your answers and just start speaking, right? Okay, so the second question is, what do you plan to do? So what is that thing you plan to do or plan to do? Okay, please search the pronunciation. The next one is, when do you plan to do? Yeah, what is the timing? The other question is, where do you plan to do? And the next question is, how do you plan to do? And the final question is, or the second final question is, why do you plan to do? I mean, what is the reason why you do it? And the last question is, with whom do you plan to do? Now, this is something like whenever you plan to do something, first of all, you have to answer these questions so that you could better understand the thing you do, like it is a better thing or not. If you don't answer these questions, definitely you'd start things and then you'd stop it. You start and stop. Like you want to understand what I do, why I do. So planning is, I think, important, and you could start from simple and smaller plannings, right? Like, even though, like, if you start speaking English language, you could have a very simple planning. You don't need to waste too much of your time on plannings, right? Just you could have 1 day planning, and then the 1 week planning, and 1 month planning. So with this, like, you would be building up your stamina, and you see great results. So if you can't answer all these questions, just answer these 2 questions. Number 1, do you plan to do something? Is it right question for you? And how would you answer this question, in no or yes? And the second question is, if yes, what do you plan to do? Right? This is the end of today's activity, but please be in contact, because in the next activity under English conversation, we would have activity number 3, where we will work on have you decided 2 plus verb, right? So this is a very important activity, activity number 3, where have you decided is a phrase at Explimp English. Thanks for watching, and be connected with Explimp English. Allah Hafiz.